So I want you to imagine a scenario. You possess thousands of highly valuable digital assets, right? Rare items, unique identifiers, essentially pieces of digital real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And these could easily serve as the foundation for a whole new generation of businesses.
Yeah.
But you keep them locked away in this massive windowless steel vault.
Right, totally hidden.
Exactly. No one can see them, no one can understand them, and honestly, the rest of the world doesn't even know they exist.
Yeah.
So the question is, do those assets actually hold value, or are they just, dead weight pulling you down?
I mean, it is the ultimate paradox of digital ownership. You've secured something incredibly scarce, but because it is completely isolated from the open market, its potential energy just sits there. It's trapped at absolute zero.
Yeah, you've essentially built a giant warehouse on the edge of town, put no sign on the door, and now you're wondering why nobody is buying your inventory. So welcome to today's Deep Dive. I'm your host, and sitting across from me is our resident digital asset expert. Today, our mission is to crack that vault open.
Yeah.
We are looking at a fascinating guide on Solana domains, and we're going to unpack the critical difference between passively hoarding digital inventory and actively transforming it into liquid, negotiable digital property.
It's a hugely important distinction, and I'm really excited to get into the mechanics of it today.
But right before we jump into the sources, I have a verbatim message to read from our sponsor, who actually builds these exact storefronts. Brought to you by Negotiate.name. The simple way to bid on a curated collection of over 3,000 Solana domains without locking up your Solana. Browse premium.sol names, make unlimited offers, and see what you can negotiate before anyone else does. How to turn Solana domain inventory into negotiable digital property. Owning Solana domains is one thing.
Right.
Turning them into negotiable digital property is something else. A person can own hundreds of names, even thousands of names. But if nobody can find them, if nobody understands them, if nobody knows they are available, if nobody knows how to make an offer, if nobody knows why the names matter,
Exactly.
then the inventory is just sitting there. It may be valuable, it may be scarce, it may include great names. But hidden inventory is not the same as liquid property.
Right, there is a big difference.
That is the difference. A Solana domain portfolio becomes more powerful when it becomes visible, searchable, organized, easy to browse, easy to understand, easy to make an offer on, and easy to negotiate. That is how domain inventory becomes digital property. Not just a private collection, not just a wallet full of names, not just a spreadsheet, but a market. A place where buyers can look, compare, imagine, and make offers.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Negotiate.name, the simple way to bid on a curated collection of over 3,000 Solana domains without locking up your Solana. Browse premium Solana names, make unlimited offers, and see what you can negotiate before anyone else does.
It is really rare to see the core structural problem laid out so cleanly like that because, well, a staggering number of people operating in the digital asset space fundamentally confuse holding inventory with operating a market.
Oh, I see this constantly.
Yeah.
People look at their crypto wallet, they see this massive list of domains they've registered, and they just assume they're active players in the domain market.
Right, they assume that ownership automatically equals opportunity. But holding a wallet full of Solana domains is no different than, I don't know, hoarding boxes of vintage watches in your basement.
Right, you have inventory, but you definitely do not have a market. Because a market requires a public list, it requires search functionality and an offer flow. Without that, you're literally invisible.
Exactly. And you have to think about the psychology of a typical digital purchase. I mean, how often do you wake up with a singular, crystal clear directive in your mind, like, I must purchase a Solana domain before noon today?
Literally never. It's always much more passive for me.
Yeah.
Like, I might be browsing, maybe checking if my own first name is available, or seeing if my business name is taken.
Right, it's discovery.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm scrolling and I see a really short, punchy category name that suddenly sparks an idea for a brand new startup.
And that spark of discovery, that is the actual engine of liquidity. Buyers do not always know what they want until they are staring right at it.
Oh, for sure.
But if you keep your assets hidden in a wallet or buried in a private spreadsheet, you are actively denying that moment of discovery from ever happening. If a buyer cannot search their category, if they can't stumble across an AI agent name that gets the gears turning in their head, the asset just remains dead.
So discoverability has to be step one. We tear down the windowless warehouse, we build a beautiful storefront with a big glass front door, we organize the shelves, and we invite the world in.
Beautifully said.
But looking at the source material, even when sellers do this, they still really struggle. Because once the buyer walks through that front door and finds a name they like, they run face first into a brick wall of bad user experience.
Oh, the friction in the crypto aftermarket is just brutal right now. Friction is basically the default state of crypto transacting.
It really is.
Let's just trace the journey of a highly motivated buyer in the current ecosystem. Say they want a specific name. Well, first, they have to figure out who actually owns it, which might involve hunting across 4 or 5 different decentralized marketplaces.
Right, and if it's not listed for sale, they have to become a digital detective, like tracing wallet addresses and trying to find the owner on social media just to send a direct message.
Which is awful. And usually you're just screaming into the void. You send a DM to a complete stranger, you try to guess what kind of price they might accept, and then you just sit there for weeks hoping they actually check their message requests.
Yeah, and even when the asset is publicly listed on a marketplace, the transactional friction is enormous. Making an offer usually demands that the buyer connect their wallet, sign a transaction on-chain, pay network gas fees,
And lock their funds.
yes, and then lock their funds into an escrow smart contract. So they are forced to part with their liquidity just to express interest.
And that is a massive psychological hurdle. I mean, if I'm a casual buyer, maybe I just want to see if the seller is willing to negotiate, you know?
Right, exactly.
I don't want to freeze $500 worth of Solana in a smart contract just to test the waters. If I have to lock up my money while I wait for a seller who might not even log in for a month, I mean, I'm just going to close the tab and walk away.
Which is why this new concept from the sources, the no lockup offer flow, is completely changing the mechanics of this market.
It really is a revolution.
Because when you remove the requirement to lock funds, you fundamentally change the pressure dynamics of the negotiation. But I do want to push back on this a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate.
Sir, go for it.
Okay, so if we let people make unlimited offers without actually putting any money on the line, no gas fees, no locked capital, aren't we just inviting a flood of annoying, time-wasting lowball offers? Like, wouldn't a seller just get spammed to death?
That's a really fair question. And if we were talking about a highly liquid, mature, market-like large cap stocks, you would be entirely correct.
Right.
But we have to evaluate the behavior of illiquid, developing markets differently. Solana domains are unique digital assets. Fixed pricing is nearly impossible right now.
Because nobody actually knows what these things are worth yet. It's not like checking the price of a barrel of oil where there's a global standard.
Precisely. The value of a premium first name versus a meme name versus a business identifier is entirely subjective. So if a seller stubbornly slaps a massive fixed public price tag on every domain in their portfolio, the market simply freezes.
I see.
Buyers see the high price, they feel intimidated, and they just leave. Conversely, if the seller prices everything low just to move volume, they leave incredible amounts of capital on the table.
So you're stuck in this pricing purgatory.
Yes. Until you embrace the lowball offer. The sources emphasize that in an illiquid market, an offer of any size is not an insult. It is a vital piece of data.
It's the beginning of price discovery.
Exactly. Think of it like the fine art market. An appraiser can tell you a painting is worth $1 million all day long. But until a human being raises a paddle in an auction room, that price is a complete fiction.
Yeah, and even if the first paddle raised is for, like, $10,000, it proves there is a pulse. It proves demand exists.
Right. A buyer throwing out a low, friction-free offer is often just knocking on the door to see if anyone is home. They want to know if the seller is active and willing to engage.
So by lowering the barrier to entry, you allow that conversation to actually start.
Exactly. The primary goal of managing digital inventory isn't to defend rigid price tags. It is to invite negotiation.
Okay, I can definitely get behind that. You eliminate the friction, you get into the table, and now you're chatting with zero pressure.
Yep.
But here is the next massive hurdle the guide points out. You are fundamentally trying to sell a random string of letters. Yes, maybe it spells a word, but to a lot of people, a domain is just abstract digital plumbing.
Yeah, it doesn't look like much on its own.
Right, so you have to give it context, otherwise they won't feel the desire to own it.
And that's where curation comes in. A raw list of 5,000 domains is not a market, it is just a pile. The human brain literally cannot process that level of uncurated data.
It's overwhelming.
It is. This is where the structural presentation of the asset becomes just as important as the asset itself. You must turn chaos into structure using categories.
Like grouping them into first names, three-letter names, payment names, AI agent names.
Exactly. You group them so the buyer doesn't have to think so hard. When a trader lands on the market, they should be able to instantly filter for trading-related names.
That makes total sense.
A founder looking for a startup identity should be able to filter for brandable, short concepts. This categorization is rooted in what the guide calls the buyer theory.
Okay, the buyer theory. Break that down for us.
The core premise is that every single valuable digital asset must have a specific hypothetical buyer in mind. If you look at a domain in your inventory and you cannot vividly imagine a local company, a decentralized app, or a specific persona wanting it, the asset is likely weak.
You know, it really reminds me of how real estate agents stage houses for sale.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, because if I walk into a totally empty room with blank white walls and wood floors, my brain just sees the box. It's actually really hard to judge the scale of the room or imagine living in it.
Right, it's just empty space.
But if a stager comes in and puts a nice mid-century desk in the corner, a rug, maybe a bookshelf, I walk in and immediately think, oh, this is an office. I could sit right there and work. The room didn't change, but the context changed everything.
The staging alters the psychological projection of the buyer. In the digital realm, you stage a domain by highlighting its utility.
Give me an example of that.
Let's take the concept of .sol names, or AI agent names. To an uneducated buyer, these just look like novelty web addresses. But practically, they have a massive technical function.
Right, because if I'm building an autonomous AI agent on Solana that needs to execute trades, pay for API calls, or interact with smart contracts, that AI needs its own wallet.
Exactly. And it is infinitely easier for humans to interact with that agent if its wallet address is, say, tradingbot.sol, rather than a random string of 44 alphanumeric characters.
So that is the context. You aren't just selling the string of letters. You are selling the digital identity, the payment handle, the decentralized branding.
The asset remains exactly the same, but the buyer's perception of its utility completely transforms. They can suddenly imagine themselves or their software utilizing it.
But I do have to ask, where is the line here?
What do you mean?
Like, how much staging or narrative spinning is too much? Because I see people in the crypto space trying to hype up absolute garbage assets with this flowery language all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
At what point does staging just become putting lipstick on a pig to try and unload a worthless domain?
Well, the sources are very clear on this boundary.
Yeah.
Narrative cannot fabricate quality. No amount of brilliant marketing or clever categorization will turn a fundamentally bad, unreadable, or confusing name into a premium asset. It is impossible.
So you can't stage a closet and call it a master bedroom.
Exactly. The utility must be genuine. But when you do possess a genuinely good asset, proper presentation bridges the imagination gap. The buyer has to see themselves occupying that digital space. And once they project themselves into the asset, desire is created.
Which brings us to the actual art of closing the deal.
Yes, the negotiation.
We've removed the friction, we've staged the asset, the buyer wants it, now you have to agree on a number. And this is where the subjective nature of this market gets incredibly tricky.
It really does.
Take a premium first name. Let's say the domain is just the name David. That asset is obviously worth an exponential amount more to someone whose actual name is David.
It is deeply personal, and this subjectivity is exactly why massive public fixed prices frequently fail.
Because it scares them off.
Right. If you list David with an astronomical public price, every David who walks by might feel intimidated or alienated. Contextual, private negotiation allows the seller to capture the personal value of the asset without shutting down the conversation before it even starts.
But wait, if I'm holding a highly personal name and the buyer knows it's their name, don't different categories of names require totally different negotiation tactics?
Oh, 100%. You cannot apply a monolithic strategy to a diverse portfolio.
Right, because I can't treat a meme name the same way I treat a premium first name.
Exactly. If you hold a top-tier, universal recognized first name, your greatest weapon is patience. You hold firm, the population is always growing, and eventually, a highly capitalized buyer with that name will enter the market.
But if I hold firm on a meme name, say a domain based on a viral joke from last week, if I wait a month for a better price, the trend dies, the culture moves on, and my asset goes to literally zero.
Exactly. Trend-based assets require velocity. You must capture the momentum and liquidate while the cultural attention is peaked.
That makes a lot of sense.
Meanwhile, highly specific business names might require an active outbound strategy. You cannot just wait for the specific local business to stumble across your storefront. You might have to locate them and initiate the conversation yourself.
And the strategy of bundling mentioned in the guide is also fascinating here.
Oh, bundling is a great tool.
Say a buyer comes to the storefront. They really want a premium category name like coffee, but they just don't have the liquidity to meet your valuation.
Right, there's a gap in the pricing.
Exactly. Instead of just walking away from the deal, the seller can bundle assets. Throw in a few related geographic names, maybe espresso, to artificially raise the perceived value of the deal on the buyer's side.
Which then gives the seller the psychological flexibility to lower the cash price. It's a brilliantly creative way to close a gap.
It really is. It requires an intimate understanding of your own inventory, though.
It does. But, we must address the real-world dilemma that arises when you are negotiating an asset connected to someone's personal identity.
That is exactly what I was thinking about, because if I'm negotiating to buy my own actual name or the exact name of my startup, I am already at a disadvantage.
You feel vulnerable.
Yeah, it feels like the seller has leverage over my identity. How does a seller negotiate for maximum value without making the buyer feel like they're being financially squeezed or like held hostage?
It all comes down to understanding the difference between a one-off flip and building a lasting market destination.
Okay, expand on that.
If a seller extracts every last drop of liquidity from a buyer through aggressive hostage-style negotiation, they might win that single transaction, but they destroy trust.
And in an ecosystem built entirely on digital reputation, if people think your storefront is a shakedown operation, they will never come back.
Precisely. Confusion, silence, and predatory tactics kill secondary markets. A robust domain portfolio must mature into a trusted destination.
Right.
By maintaining a clean, low-pressure offer flow, and by engaging in transparent, professional negotiation, the seller establishes a standard. Good negotiation is never about squeezing the buyer. It is an investigative process.
Like figuring out what they actually need.
Exactly. Who is the buyer? What are they attempting to build? How can this asset serve them? When you understand their context, you can structure a fair exchange of value.
It's treating them like a partner in the ecosystem rather than just an exit liquidity target. I think that is a really powerful distinction.
It's the only way to survive long term.
So to pull all these threads together for you listening, if you are sitting on a spreadsheet full of digital assets, you do not have a market. You just have a very quiet, locked warehouse.
Gathering dust.
Exactly. True digital property is only forged when you organize that inventory, completely eliminate the transactional friction that scares casual buyers away, vividly stage the asset so people can imagine its future utility, and invite open, contextual negotiation.
It is the deliberate, active transformation of potential energy into kinetic energy within the market.
And for everyone listening, whether you're heavily invested in Solana domains, managing traditional .com web addresses, or building any kind of digital product suite, the underlying mechanics here are universal.
They apply everywhere.
They really do. Visibility, proper contextual education, and the aggressive removal of friction are the ultimate keys to unlocking liquidity. You have to build a front door, and you have to make sure it's actually unlocked.
Absolutely. And, as we conclude this deep dive, I want to pose a broader question to the listeners that builds on the evolution of these assets.
Oh, I love these. Lay it on us.
We have spent considerable time discussing how first names and AI agent identities are solidifying as negotiable digital property.
Right.
But as our physical lives and our digital footprints continue to merge indistinguishably, what happens to the concept of ownership when the lines between personal identity and tradable asset completely dissolve?
Oh, wow.
Will we inevitably reach a point where we don't merely sell these identifiers, but actively lease out our digital identities?
Wait, like becoming a digital landlord for your own name?
Precisely. Renting out your verifiable digital footprint to AI agents or decentralized applications the exact same way you would lease a commercial storefront in a physical city.
That is a staggering thing to think about. Collecting yield on your own digital identity?
It's the next frontier.
It really is.
Yeah.
Something to seriously chew on the next time you're evaluating your own digital assets and wondering if they belong locked in a vault or out in the open market. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.